I made a game about checkpoints for the 4th anniversary of Vimjam and missed the deadline. But let's go back and see how this all went down. It all started one day when I was scrolling through YouTube. I saw a new video of Vimlarks and it was announcing that the game would be returning this year with the focus of checkpoints. The focus is announced a couple of weeks before the jam just so you can prototype and get some ideas going. When I heard the focus, I found myself with some great ideas flowing through my head, some of which are a game where you use your checkpoint as a weapon. You can pull it out of the ground and fight the hordes of enemies around you, and if you ever get low, you can stick it back into the ground, die, respawn, and continue with your rampage. There's also an interesting concept coming from the popular retro game Shovel Knight. In this game, when you reach a checkpoint, you have two options. Either you can let it exist as a normal checkpoint from where you'll respawn upon a death, or you can break it for gold, losing the security of keeping your progress. Now, while no ideas really came from this concept, I did definitely feel that putting it into its own game and maybe expanding on the concept a bit would be a good idea. After researching games, I also realized a lot of games have abandoned this concept of this checkpoint just being a magical stake out of the ground that you respawn at, and they took something more natural for the checkpoints. Let's take for example Hollow Knight. This game, instead of having regular checkpoint, has something like benches, from which you can then fast travel to and respawn upon a death. These were just some of my initial ideas, and there was still a team that needed to be announced. So when the game was starting, I sat down and watched the team reveal to be delighted with the team, which was of course Cross Paths. God damn it, I did not like this team at all. My dreams have become a mere utopia. Okay, now I did over-exaggerate this a bit, but did I really? This killed all of my ideas. Now, you might think that having a crosspath upgrading system or something like that in a fighting game would be really cool, but that's basically the game me and Dusty made for the GMTK Game Jam, video in the top right corner. I was left without any ideas. I actually had no ideas would I actually continue working on this game or not, because this was a bit depressing. I was hoping to work on a shooter or some kind of platformer, but now I got nothing. I was planning on quitting the gym, but I decided to sleep on the idea and see how it would feel in the morning. The next day I ended up just rolling around and feeling kinda bummed out about the whole thing. After such a good start, it turned into such a disaster. But then I remember I was kind of an idiot, and I'm glad I did. See, I went back to the itch.io page to check the rules again, and I realized that the team was semi-optional, which means even though it is 1/7 of your score, I'm not going for a high score, so I can still make the game I wanted. After realizing this, I felt super excited to work on my checkpoint fighting game, and I wasn't feeling it anymore. In my head, it felt boring, and well, I kinda knew it would be boring, so I went and tried to think of a new idea, and believe me, I thought and got my idea. I would use the pulling out checkpoints from the ground from my last game idea and turn it into a platformer, well, more of a rage game. The idea was to pick up the checkpoint, and depending on how long you charge the checkpoint, the harder you would throw the checkpoint. After which you can respawn at the so-set checkpoint. As I had wasted the first day and it was already the second day of the gym, I didn't really want to waste any time and I got right into making the game. It was about a 50-50 on would the game idea actually work, but I liked those odds. I code the basic movements in the throwing mechanic. The throwing mechanic works in the following way. If you wish to throw the object a short distance, you hold the spacebar for less time, and if you wish to throw it further, you hold it for longer. We count the amount of time you're charging in it, adding 1 to the 4th every second you hold the spacebar. I ended up taking inspiration from the checkpoints art from Shovel Knight, and I also decided to use this pixel perfect camera Unity offers, as I think it makes the game look a lot better and more retro-like. At that point, I also decided to use this simple 3-colored art style, which is usually found in older games which don't have such a large amount of space on cartridges or their consoles to display more colors. As the day was coming to a close, I had a working system for throwing the checkpoint and player movement, which I was really proud with. I decided to call it a night pretty early as I needed rest. As the next day rolled around, I found this game fun, but a bit too simple. I wanted there to be more of a challenge. Now, of course, I'm not saying that this simple mechanic in a rage game sucks or that it isn't good. There are good games like Jump King and Pogo Stock, which are great games, but I wanted something more, and would also help me in designing some of the puzzles later in the game. And I ended up finding my ideas in the checkpoint's design. The checkpoint has this little fire in it, which is supposed to be a sign of you activating the checkpoint and you being able to respawn at that checkpoint. But what if you could grab that fire and turn it into its own checkpoint? Okay, this seems confusing and it might be a bit, but I'll try my best to explain the idea here. When you throw a checkpoint onto the wall, you can't really pick it up because if you did, you would just fall down. But you can create a new checkpoint and throw it onto the other side. After you do this, you no longer have the ability to respawn at the checkpoint. To regain your ability of respawning at the checkpoint, you would need to reach the newly created checkpoint. Okay, now let's say there's this big gap. How would you reach the other side? Easy. The checkpoint becomes unstable after you take the first one out and it would explode in a few seconds. This mechanic was a long shot and I didn't really know if it would work or not, but it ended up adding a lot into the game. At the end it didn't really work out, but it worked out enough so if you figure it out you would know how to use it and then it would be fun. And it also just gave me the ability to be a lot more chaotic with my level design, as you no longer depend on just that one checkpoint you had to start. Speaking of levels, rage games usually have you climb up this very big vertical mountain or some kind of vertical obstacle. This is mostly just made so it's easier to get the player to just fall all the way down. And as I never made a rage game before, I just decided to stick with their method and hope it worked. For the game jam, I wish to keep my game in between 5 and 10 minutes long, as people want to play as many games as they can during the game jam, meaning that most people probably won't play your game to the end if it's longer than that. So making something small with a lot of quality in it is better than making something huge but not much put into the quality aspect. This wasn't really gonna work for a rage game, as the main point of a rage game is that you fall down and waste a lot of time trying to get back up. So in the end I decided to just abandon the rage game part a bit and make some parts where you can fall, but it's not that often and it's not that big of a fall if you do end up falling. There isn't much else to talk about. Level design is mostly just blocks, some cool obstacles, and cool ways to pass them. The game was basically done now, but I still had 4 days to work on the game and I was searching for a way to maybe try implementing the Game Jam's theme, cross paths. So I thought, wouldn't it be cool if there was like this mysterious person who crossed paths with you and they were like this old nemesis of yours or something like that. You know, just to incorporate the theme, and hey, it sounded like a cool idea that could add a lot to the polish of the game. When I was creating the game, I used this player character which I didn't really like that much. And now if you know me from my past videos, you should be able to answer this multiple choice question. What did I do to the player sprite? Number 1. Did I switch it out and actually make it look good as I said I would? Number 2, did I keep the old sprites and now having to deal with all of you guys telling me you were right in the comments about me not changing the sprite? Or number 3, I switched it but I was trying to make you think I didn't, so the correct answer would be B, but of course the correct answer is C. I was just trying to make you think it was B because I know you guys. And this was the new player sprite. And honestly, it looks so cute. I had no idea what the art style was, but I wanted to keep it simple, a color palette without any outlines. And he also got this super duper cute walking animation. The design for the super evil nemesis of yours was a super cute looking witch. That does not make any sense, but I'll leave it. After assigning both of the characters, I had to make the dialogue system, which I did just by checking if the player was speaking or if the witch was speaking, and then triggered the dialogue system when you were close enough to the witch. Pretty simple stuff. I did, however, have to create their own bubbles for speaking, which I honestly can't tell you how cute the player looks. And this is when I came up with one of the best ideas a game development could have ever had. While looking at the player sprite, I decided the only thing he would say is meep. And the witch would just have normal speaking as you would expect from a witch. Big spoiler alert for the end of the game. At the end of the game you meet the boy's father as the screen fades black. Classical ending. This was basically the game done now. This, however, took a long time to make, so I ended up exporting the project 10 minutes from the deadline, when a few thousand errors showed up. And as I was struggling to fix them, I saw the timer go by and vanish. I was so mad at Unity in this moment. I do realize you shouldn't be exporting the game a few minutes before the deadline, but still, it was a perfect segue into telling you I'm switching to the Godot engine. As all you have probably heard if you're in the game development community, Unity's new pricing plan is a complete insanity. And honestly, if they come out and take it back, it doesn't really change much. Unity still seems like a ticking time bomb ready to explode at any moment. And yeah, that's it for this video. My fail to submit a project to the 4th Vimjam. See you next time. Hopefully I'll be able to submit a game for the 5th Vimjam.